Hi, my name's Starsky and welcome to From the Studio on Clubbing TV. In this episode, I'm going to take a look at a big, fat and filthy monosynth in a box. It's the Studio Electronics SE-1X. Why have I got a Mini Moog on the table next to me when this is the SE-1X episode? Well, they've got a bit of a shared history actually. Studio Electronics started making something called the MIDI Moog, I think it was called. It was rack mountable Moog, and they used the innards from Mini Moogs, so the actual circuit boards from Mini Moogs, and stuck them in a rack until they ran out of parts basically, because Moogs stopped making the Mini Moog. So they started making something called the MIDI Mini, and they're making their own boards. And those boards, or parts of those boards, have found the way into this. The SE-1 was first released back in 1994, so that's nearly 30 years they've been making these. Digitally controlled, so it's not the same as a Mini Moog. You can see here we've got a screen, so we've got presets. This has got about 900 presets in it. It's got 8 banks of 99 presets, which obviously you don't get on the Mini Moog. The one I've got here is the SE-1X Red Eye Angel Dust version, which is skinned in a more Oberheim style looking beige than a black Moog looking thing. And a version of this called the 2019 was re-released in 2019, and that can still be found in stores, so it's still available new if the risk of buying used isn't your thing. But apart from the digital control, they've got very similar innards. The SE-1X has got all discrete circuits, and discrete circuit basically means it's not a synth on a chip. All the famous 80s things you can think of, like the 106 for example, they had all the components of the synth itself on a chip, not in resistors and capacitors and all that sort of stuff. So all the really famous ones like the Jupiter 8, or the really expensive ones, have got discrete circuits because it makes things a little bit out of tune. It makes those polysynths sound big, rich and full, and it makes the Mini Moog the Mini Moog. So I think it's fair to say it's a close relative, or at least a distant cousin of the Mini Moog, and they can sound almost identical, or pretty much identical actually. I'll show that in a minute. But the first thing I've got to work out is how to get this on camera, because with it being rack mounted, you can't really do this and have anything above, when you can see now why it's not really Instagram friendly and why everybody makes synths in a box so you can put your camera overhead. So you have to work that out before we look at exactly how it all works. Okay, I've worked it out. I've got a camera up there, I've got a camera down there, and I need that camera down there. And that means you don't have to look at this ugly mug for the next 10 minutes. I'm controlling the SE-1 with the key step 37. And just while we're here, turn this up. You can start to see straight away why it sounds like a Mini Moog. Let's start by taking a look at what we got on the SE-1X then. Start off with that's a sawtooth, triangle, sawtooth and triangle, and then we got pulse width. And we got pulse width modulation. But on the Mini Moog, we only get 3 discrete values. We get a square, which is 50%, then one around 75, I think, and then one around 10 or something. So just 3 values of a pulse. But you can't do this sort of thing. Obviously, you'd normally do that with an LFO, not with your hands. But you can hear straight away how meaty this thing is. And you can blend those waves. But why do I say it sounds like a Mini Moog? What's related to it? Let's just do that big 3 oscillator patch I mentioned earlier. Put this onto a sawtooth. Let's put them octaves apart, shall we? That's your big typical Mini Moog sound, made it famous. But on this, let's do the same. Let's put 2 sawtooths on. Let's change the tuning of those to get 3 octaves. It's not quite as easy as it is with the much bigger knobs on the Mini Moog, but hopefully you can see what I've got there, 12, 24 and 36. Same sound, isn't it? So you can really hear this is a bit of a distant cousin, can't you? Okay, what else have we got on the SE-1X? Well, you've just seen me playing with the filter there. And this is discrete parts. It's basically a Mini Moog filter in here. I think it's licensed off them. Or used to be. Slightly steppy. But it's really got that Mini Moog tone. Beautiful stuff. And then we've got a button here, you can see 24 dB. Switch that in and now we're in 12 dB mode. And I like this one, I think it sounds dirtier. Also got a bandpass mode when you're in 12 dB as well. Don't know if you can see that on the screen. So yeah, it's really gnarly and dirty, isn't it? Another thing it's got over the Mini Moog is 3 LFOs. If we look here, we can see we've got LFO1, LFO2 and LFO3, and we can change the shape of these. On this Mini Moog, you've got a triangle and a square, I think. On this down here, we've got, let's go over and see, a triangle, square, saw up, saw down, noise, sample and hold. So a few more options on this, on the LFOs as well. But as I say, you've got 3 of them. Mini Moog's only got 1. And then we've got 4 envelopes. Mini Moog's only got 2. And these are ADR envelopes. So I won't go into exactly the difference, but basically ADSR, you get another sort of extra bit of control on the ADSR envelopes. But you've got 1, 2, 3 and 4, and you can control the amount of 3 and 4 via the front panel, and you can basically adjust any parameter with envelopes 3 and 4. So it really does feel like it's blowing the Mini Moog out the water, but the Mini Moog does have some tricks up its sleeve, in particular FM, where you modulate either the oscillators or the filter with oscillator 3. So let's try that. Sounds a bit mad, but you can get really nice tones like this. Oh, like that. Beautiful, that, isn't it? Let's try it on the filter. The SE-1 doesn't have that, but it does have ring modulation. If we just turn oscillators, or turn the oscillators off, actually, so we're not listening to the oscillators at all. Turn the ring mod up. So you're getting similar sort of things happening. It's not the same. All all sorts of juiciness in there. And that ring mod works between oscillators 2 and 3, so we're not listening to them, but oh, it's beefy, that one, isn't it? And luckily with this, once you find something decent, you can actually save it. So let's just save that, actually. User 61, bank 8, save, done. I'll definitely come back and have a play with that later, but let's have a look at some of the presets, shall we? So in this we've got 8 banks of presets. Let's just have a listen to these. I know this, this bank here has got some really nasty things in it. And the intro track was made using this preset here. And then add in a second or a third oscillator, I should say. Oh. Sync in that. And when something sounds this good, it's only a couple of jumps from an initial little TikTok video idea to something much bigger. It's worth mentioning that this has also got an app, and the app is like an editor librarian, but you can actually see what's happening in all the patches. And when the patches get quite complex, it's really handy to figure out what's happening, and it means you can obviously store all your banks on the computer. So there you have it, the SE-1X from Studio Electronics. It's the second one I've owned. I did own the SE-1 back in the 90s and I got rid of it when I bought the Mini Moog, but it's got its own tone palette, and now's the time to snap one up because they're reduced in value because they've brought out the SE-3X. So a lot of SE-1X owners are now selling them to get an SE-3X. So if you want deep, dirty, fat and filthy sounds, as well as all those lovely lush Mini Moog style sounds as well, definitely worth checking it out. And I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please don't forget that you can watch it whenever you like on our Clubbing TV official YouTube channel on the From the Studio playlist. And if you've got any questions about it, please leave them in the comments and I'll see what I can do to answer them. So see you in the next episode of From the Studio.